It's time to make sports talk great again with Curt Schilling and Steve Deace.
Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to today's episode of We Talk Sports here on The Blaze. I am Steve Deace. He is World Series champion, Hall of Famer to be, Curt Schilling. Each day we put 25 minutes on the clock, and whether you are watching on The Blaze or on YouTube, listening to a podcast, and if you're doing the latter two, you know the drill. Like, subscribe, 5-star review, when appropriate. Thank you to those who've already done so. We put 25 minutes on the clock, get to as many of the day's sports topics as we possibly can. Curt, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go, and I apologize. I'm trying to grow a beard, so whatever this looks like, I apologize, but I'm giving it a shot. The
good news is it really can't impact your look at all, no matter how bad it comes out.
Okay,
so don't worry about
that. That's the upside.
Good. There's always, my friend, there's always a silver lining. Let's get to it. Beginning now, it is our NFL Hot Stove episode with the bulk of free agency done. There are still a few names worthy of mentioning. We'll get to those in a bit. But for the most part, NFL teams have spent a lot of the wad they've been saving up over the offseason, but not just in free agency. That's why we're calling this Hot Stove, because it's also come via the trade. So let's start with Le'Veon and the Jets, shall we? Now, I think Le'Veon Bell is getting a bad rap, and I say this as someone that's been critical of him, and I'm not even critical of him for sitting out for free agency, but I really didn't like signing your franchise player designation and then not showing up to be with your teammates, and that was something you and I were very critical of throughout the course of the last season. All right, but he's getting some criticism because the deal that he has signed with the Jets is actually going to pay him less per season than the $14.5 million franchise tender the Steelers offered him last August. Right. However, that $14.5 million was guaranteed. When you look at the guaranteed money in the Jets deal, it is well over $30 million. I mean, he has improved the guaranteed amount of money by sitting out last year. He has improved his guaranteed money by over 100%. Well, also, go ahead. You want to touch on that?
I just want to jump on that point. That's the big difference between football and every other sport.
Absolutely.
Is the guaranteed contract money. So many deals you see are 9 figures or close to that. And they're not. This is especially for a running back. So I think that was probably the deal sealer for him.
Don't you think he's getting an unfair rap? I mean, he improved his guaranteed money by over 100% by sitting out last year.
That people underplay or underestimate or undervalue what that actually means. To a football player, it's everything.
Right. Because everybody's looking at what he makes per year. Most of these guys don't see year 4 and 5 of any of these deals. Okay?
Exactly right.
So it doesn't matter what the salary is in year 5, because what happens is your dead money, and we'll get to more of this in the overpaid segment here in a few minutes, but the dead money on your deal goes down as the deal goes on, so they can cut you after you get old, right? That's why the guaranteed money is what matters. It doesn't matter that the Jets are going to pay him less per season. What matters is he improved the guaranteed money. He's going to, because if he had signed that $14.5 million and gotten hurt and could never play again last year, he still would have had probably more money than Brewster's Millions can spend. Well, now though, he's got 100% more than that by sitting out last year. Yep. To me, I think it actually worked out pretty good. And then if you look at the team that he's going to, they have a new coach there in Adam Gase. If you're a fantasy football player, go look at running back numbers under the Dolphins. So when Adam Gase was the coach there, Le'Veon Bell is going to get his touches. And with the young quarterback there and Sam Darnold, the best friend any young quarterback has is what? A running game. I think this is a good fit from a personnel standpoint, scheme standpoint, fantasy standpoint. And whether you like what he pulled last year on his teammates, and neither one of us do, he got his money. If you ask me, Le'Veon Bell won here.
I don't disagree even remotely. Again, I'm not sure that I can overstate the value of guaranteed money to a football player, to any athlete, obviously. But football is such a different thing. Everything about it is different. And so, yeah, I mean, he went from guaranteed 14 to guaranteed 30 plus million. And if his career ends after the 5th game because of a horrible knee injury, then people will be like, wow, what a smart deal. But I don't blame him. I'm a Steeler fan. So, I'm
here's the
not
thing.
happy about how it went.
He could have done all of this and just not sign the franchise tender and signal to his teammates he was going to be there. That's the part about this. Everything else, you know what, man? He went for his. He did what he had to do. He handled his business. As a capitalist, I can't hate on him. But don't promise your teammates you're going to be there and then not show up.
Let me just tell you, though, that I agree with you 99.9%. The problem is that we don't know everything from an internal perspective. there are a lot of things that happen in these discussions that people say or do that never become public.
True.
That make players say, you know what, never again. And maybe that happened. But again, yes, he put his name on it and he didn't honor it. And that bothers me.
All right, let's go to the other blockbuster trade. There's three of them. We talked about the first one last week, Antonio Brown. So we have Le'Veon Bell, which was a free agent signing, not a blockbuster trade. So there were two of them. My bad. Odell Beckham Jr. goes to the Browns in a trade. Now, the Browns have him. He just signed a contract extension.
Remember, they signed him, so we didn't sign him so we could trade him.
Right. A year ago. This is what's so rare about this situation for the Browns. Normally, when you get a player like this, he's not 25, number one. Secondly, when you get a player like this, he's not 25 and he's heading into his contract year, so he's going to use you as his foil to get paid. They got him at 25. He's under contract with a static salary amount for the next 4 years, meaning he goes out there, catches 120 balls, 15 touchdowns. His number is in. It's guaranteed. Then I know, he's like a lot of big name wide receivers. He likes to run his mouth, but he's going there to play with his old friend, his college teammate. These guys literally grew up together, Jarvis Landry. So there's a chemistry pairing there that's unique that the Browns can offer. On top of that, you have the personality of Baker Mayfield, and this is why I told you last year I would have made him the number one pick. I liked Sam Darnold a lot, but for Cleveland, I just thought Baker Mayfield had some hair of the dog, Nazareth, that locker room needed. He's not taking the crap from OBJ like Eli Manning is. He's just not. That's not his persona. Dude's grabbing his junk at Kansas. Okay?
Right.
He's grabbing his junk at Kansas. OBJ wants to run his mouth and say, why did I get 10 catches? You can only imagine what Baker Mayfield is going to be on SportsCenter saying that night. He's just not going to get ran over the way Eli Manning did.
Get out of the huddle.
No doubt. No doubt about it. I mean, Baker will throw a 175-mile-an-hour fastball at his face mask and say, hey, were you open? That won't happen. All right? Yeah. So, I think this is maybe the most talented offense in the NFL going into next fall. We'll talk more about that here in just a second with the Browns. But when you look at this trade, and the Giants now appear to be in total rebuild mode. Remember, they passed on the quarterbacks last year in what was a much better quarterback draft than this one, and they went with Saquon Barkley instead. Now they get rid of arguably the best receiver in the league in the prime of his career after they just signed him to a long-term deal. What the hell is the plan in New York? Do you know?
No, there is no plan. I think that they've they transitioned in the middle of a plan to another agenda. I don't know what it is. I of all the people on both of these teams, the person I feel probably saddest for is Saquon Barkley, because he's going to be a running back with no other options for the foreseeable future. But I got to tell you, wow. And these first two headlines affect each other. You bet.
You're talking one player, one potential Hall of Fame player leaving that division.
Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell leaving the Steelers.
Another potential Hall of Fame player going to that division.
Holy crap.
Let's go there. Let's look at this offense that Cleveland has. This is insane. All right. So you're talking about David Njoku, who is one of the best young tight ends in the NFL. The running back tandem is Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Yeah. The two guys who the last 2 years in a row led all rookies in rushing yards. Your receivers now are Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry, who, if Julian Edelman isn't the best slot receiver in the NFL, Jarvis Landry is. And oh, by the way, here's the number one overall pick we had at quarterback last year, who totally transformed our franchise after we fired Hugh Jackson and made him the starting quarterback. Tell me, I just looked at this, and we'll get more into this later in the show. I don't see a more talented offense in the NFL. This is filthy.
There are certain things that happen. You remember, a lot of people are too young to remember this, but when I came to Boston and we won in 2004, over the next couple of years and we won in 2007, Boston became a place where it flipped. A place where people didn't want to go to a place where people did want to go. Mm-hmm. And it was its own little incentive for free agents. I think the same exact thing is going to happen to Cleveland.
They're still $50 million under the cap, Curt.
And I believe they're legit. I believe the roster's legit.
I think they might have the best defensive line in the NFL too, and no one's even talking about that.
No one is talking about the defense, which is why people are going to act surprised when they really shouldn't. Excuse me, but
now they got the new coach there. We don't really know much about him. Freddie Kitchens, he's taken over, and he kind of looks like a good old boy with the beer belly and the dip in his mouth. Kind of like a caricature out of North Dallas 40. I'll tell you this though, your odds of being a pretty good coach are greatly heightened by the Jimmies and Joes you put out there on the field. Exactly. And you're putting those guys out there on the field. There's a lot of guys that could win that division with that talent on that offense.
I have absolutely no issue with them being a 10-win team. None. Because I think their division, I think they're going to beat the crap out of their division for the most part. And I could see them being better. It's a good time to be a Cleveland Browns fan. Said no one ever, but now it's true.
And let me say this one more time: they're still $50 million under the cap.
Yeah, and here's the thing: if they do the Theo Epstein, Billy Bean, intelligent, don't just spend it because you have it.
Yep.
Spend it on the right people.
No, you know what you do? Here's what you do with that money is you set $20 million of it aside right now. And after Baker Mayfield has a great year in year 2 of this contract, you sign him to the extension right now. So because you're talking, and this goes to where I want to go now. All right. I'm as cynical about my Lions as anybody could be about a team. All right. And I have to guard how I analyze Detroit the way most fans have to guard the way they analyze their favorite team, but in reverse. I can't see objective good because I've had my nutsack just stomped on and fed down my throat so many times over 36 years. I can't look at it objectively. All right. But if I hear one more time, well, they overpaid for these guys. First of all, the salary cap in the NFL since 2011, a couple months ago, you and I were talking about Major League Baseball saw its overall salary pool diminish for the first time since 2002, right?
Yep.
Okay. The salary cap in the NFL since 2011, that's 8 years, has gone up 56% since 2011. The salary cap debuted in 1994 was $36 million. It's $188 million. Well, all right, that's like a 600% increase, guys.
The owners finally realized that they can make billions still.
Yes.
And pay their players.
Yes. Yeah. So the reality is the only player the Lions could possibly overpay for is Matthew Stafford. And that's true of any franchise. The only player you because of how much value is placed at that position, the rest of these guys, again, these deals are backlogged, and a lot of that money that's why you only look at the guaranteed money, not the salary number. People are freaking out. So the Lions signed a slot corner who was rated the number 3 slot corner by Pro Football Focus. They signed him to $9 million. Now, Adam Humphries, the slot receiver free agent, just got $12 million. Jarvis Landry, a slot receiver last year, got $16. Julian Edelman won a damn Super Bowl being a slot receiver as a one-man team for the Patriot offense. This is a very important stat. The Lions defense last year ended up being a top 10 defense in the league. In the second half of the year, they bought into what Matt Patricia was teaching on defense, and they played very good defense at the end of the year. Their one weakness, slot receiver. Slot receivers last year, throwing to the slot receiver against the Lions last year, you had a QBR of 113. The slot corner they just signed from the Seahawks, his all-time QBR throwing against him in the slot is 84. That's a 20-point improvement. That's probably 2 or 3 third down conversions less you give up a game. That's like the difference in winning a whole game over the course of a season or not. Yep. So if they sign this guy for $6.5 million or $9 million, why it doesn't make much of a difference. This is a stupid fan trope. And I think a lot of times fans of teams that are used to losing do this just because they can't see the forest through the trees because they're used to having their heart stomped on. But your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is, I don't know any fans that are going on food stamps or having to pull their kids from private school because of what their team spent. I always found that to be one of the worst possible arguments ever. These teams have developed, and I would tell you this, as a fan of the Lions, you're allowed to be as cynical as you choose.
I don't doubt that, to a certain extent.
And I got the same thing for me with the Jets, the Bills, the Browns. There's a litany of teams where they get what they deserve from the fans, no matter what the fans say, until they change, until they do something different. But the argument about I can't believe they overpaid for these guys generally doesn't come in the midst of them overpaying for someone in lieu of someone else.
Right.
Or that overpaying doesn't stop them from signing a key franchise player.
Like that guy right there, Trey Flowers. Okay.
Yes.
So Matt Patricia was the coordinator of the defense that developed him. By every metric, when you look at run stopping, when you look at sacks, when you look at quarterback pressures, he's not elite in any of those. He's great though at all of them, meaning that he's one of those players that has he's never going to be your 20 sack guy, but he has no flaw in his scheme. It's a huge hole on the team. It's the one that we run the same defense that made him a star in New England.
He's what is it? Jack of all trades, master of none.
So the franchise tender for a defensive end in the NFL this year is $17 million. What did the Lions? What did they sign him for? What the franchise tender, what the average was for the roster. So my answer is, so he was by far the number one defensive end. So don't offer more than 12. Okay, he goes and signs with the Cincinnati Bengals, and you suck at that position next year. Why do you care if they spend another $4 or $5 million to get him to come to Detroit? Which, oh, by the way, isn't exactly a free agent destination if you haven't checked recently. I don't understand this logic. Can you help me?
No, I can't. But I will tell you this: if I'm a Lions fan, I'm just going to hold on to the fact that my team has a coach named Jim Bob Cooter.
Not anymore. We got rid of him.
He left.
Yeah, we finally told Matt Patricia he could hire his own offensive coordinator. Yeah,
the offense.
And by the way, you know who he hired? He hired Darrell Bevell, the old offensive coordinator for the Seahawks Super Bowl teams. That's who the new offensive coordinator in Detroit is. So
I think you're seeing a shift in the NFL this year. I think there's some franchises that are trying to shed labels and well-earned labels.
And if you look at who the Lions, Justin Coleman, Seahawks, Trey Flowers, Patriots, Danny Amendola, Patriots, and then and Jesse James, the Steelers. Okay, so those are all their biggest needs: slot corner, tight end, rush, edge. Those are the three biggest weaknesses on the team last year. And they signed three guys that are all high achieving players from winning cultures and organizations. If like Jesse James, I'm not as interested in him if he puts up the same stats for the Buccaneers or the Buffalo Bills. But the fact that all of these guys, what that is now is Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia are sending a message to the old guys that are used to, hey, 9-7's good enough, pay me, and it's the Lions because we suck, nobody cares. They're sending a message which is, we will bring in guys that buy into a winning culture and will work. And if you don't want to do that, you want to bitch about running in the snow, we'll run your ass out of here. And I like that as a Lions fan. That tells me you're addressing the culture in the locker room, and I'm all for that. Okay.
There is no culture in the locker room, by the way. Whatever it is losing.
Yes.
That's the stuff you have to...
Remember I told you last fall, I'm on Matt Patricia's side because he walks in there with 4 rings on his fingers. What the hell have any of these guys done? They got one playoff win in 62 years.
And you got to get in the corners, get out the cobwebs and all of it out. And that for me, let's put it this way, I want to be a college baseball. I would love to be a college baseball coach. I would love to walk into a program that's in a warm climate that isn't that good, because I believe that I could build a culture alone that would make players want to be part of the program. And that's the NFL. And I told you this, with a Major League Baseball manager, it's not about when you bunt and hit and run anymore. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
You have a bench coach and other coaches. Like in NFL, you have an offensive, defensive coordinator. You have to manage people.
Yep.
You have to manage in football. You have to get the 53 guys on your roster to buy into what you're selling, number one. And number two, no matter how much they hate each other, no matter how much Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger can't stand each other, when they leave the locker room, they're always on the same page.
Amen.
And that, to me, that's what Bill Belichick, that's why so many people get his coaches and sign his players, because they have proven that capability.
Like one of the Lions players was quoted anonymously saying, Matt Patricia thinks he's Bill Belichick, but he ain't won a damn thing. My response to that would be, first of all, he's got 4 rings. Secondly, you play for the Lions. What the hell have you won? Honestly?
Ever.
You know what? Find out who that is and cut his ass and send him to the Jurassic Age, as far as I'm concerned. All right.
Trade him to Jacksonville.
Let's go to who's left. There is still some shopping to be done. As of this morning, when we're taping this, you have Justin Houston, the whose better days are behind him, but is still an effective pass rusher. Golden Tate. Remember, my Lions got huge heat when they let him go to the Eagles for a 3rd-round pick. Well, he's still sitting out there unsigned. Interesting. And Ndamukong Suh for the Rams. He is still out there. Clinton Dix, who was traded by the Packers and then wasn't brought back by the Redskins. Maybe, we kind of laughed. or wondered about why they would trade a safety that good. Maybe the fact he's still out there is indicative of there's an issue with him that the Packers knew about that we did not. Ziggy Ansah, who, when he played with my Lions was really good. He played for the Lions about as often as you did, Curt. Now, he's living proof the best ability is availability, and he was never available. Jared Cook's one of those tight ends who runs like Tarzan and plays like Jane. And then there's Muhammad Wilkerson. If you're going to run a 3-4 and you don't have a nose guard yet, you know what I always say, if you don't have a nose tackle in a 3-4 defense, you don't have a 3-4 defense. That might be a guy you might want to look plugging in there because he can still take up some space. But any of those names stand out to you?
Well, Sue, Ndamukong Suh, because I'm a firm believer in the philosophy that you preach early in the year. I never looked at it like that, but if you have to be able to protect the quarterback and get the quarterback,
right?
And he is. I think he's probably one of the dirtiest players I've ever seen.
Yep.
I look at that list and I
Conrad Dobler without the charm. Yeah.
Maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but I don't. In the NFL, with as much as off the field stuff has come into play, character issues come into play. I wonder what being a free agent in the NFL still, what that list says about these guys as players. Mm-hmm. Are these guys clubhouse magnets? Are they guys that inspire and lead? Because it seems to me that the football is finally catching up to baseball in that sense and understanding if you've got a cancer in the clubhouse, don't care what number of man he is on your roster. You hope he's not your quarterback. But even if he's your 53rd guy, he'll find a way to screw you. And I wonder, given how much value, well, you've seen some other guys who probably are less talented than these guys who have signed, and probably some of it is the monetary ask. But I don't wonder if we're starting to see a transition in the NFL to, maybe I don't need Pac-Man Jones for my 8-8 team.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm not making any claims on character for those guys because I don't know the game as well as you do from a personality perspective.
And maybe the reason I'm 8-8 is because I have guys like that on my team.
Maybe the reason I'm the Cincinnati Bengals is that every one of my offensive players is on parole.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, could be. That could be. All right, so here are my updated NFL power ratings based on what teams have done in the offseason and injured players. Like the 49ers, we forget how much their roster was decimated by injuries, like Jimmy Garoppolo, okay? So these are guys coming back off of injury, what they've done in the offseason, and then in parentheses is their draft order, all right? Because to me, a draft order is the ultimate power rating of how you ended the last season because it's based on what you actually did on the field, right? Okay? So, I've got the Browns number 2.
Yeah,
I think because when I combine a top 5 defensive line and top 5 offensive talent, that wins on a lot of Sundays in the National Football League. To me, their roster looks a lot like the one the Rams built last offseason.
Is this
I just think with a more dynamic quarterback.
Yeah, and so I guess what I was going to ask you is, so the only teams I would have ahead of them are the Rams and the Chiefs. Patriots, Rams, and the Chiefs. I would have the Browns.
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. To me, I think the Chiefs have lost quite a bit. I still, that quarterback is absolutely, Pat Mahomes is from another planet. But they've lost. They've got some holes I still think to plug. We'll see.
See the
I'm surprised the Colts did not do more. I'm surprised they didn't go get a Le'Veon Bell or something like that. Yeah, I was surprised at that.
That was what I thought was. I don't know how the cap issue affected them.
They're way under the cap.
Right.
Way under.
I mean, I knew they could do it. I guess I would tell you this. This makes me believe that the motto in Browns camp has to be, "We haven't won anything yet."
Agreed.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, because I got to tell you, they're going to go into camp and look around and go, "Holy crap!"
Yeah.
We're really good. And they've got the coaching staff has to beat into their heads, and Baker Mayfield has to tote the messages. Yeah, we can be, but we haven't done poop yet.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then I got no problem with them being the top 5 when the season ends.
Here's my most ascending teams right now, all right? Meaning teams that have moved up the most this offseason from where they finished in the draft. The Browns move up 15 spots. 49ers, Lions, and the Jaguars move up 9. We forget how great the Jaguars defense is, and now they have a legitimate quarterback. We forgot this team was in the AFC Championship game 2 years ago. The Raiders move up 8 spots. The Packers move up 7 spots. I think they quietly, if the the Lions got the kind of the frontier guys, the next day Green Bay went out and got sort of the second guy on every one of those lists to boost that defense. And I also think it's almost impossible to have a quarterback have a good a year as Aaron Rodgers did and suck as bad as you did. I can't believe you can do that 2 years in a row. And then the Jets move up 6 spots on my ascending list. Descending teams in the offseason. The Cowboys go down 14 spots. The Falcons and Redskins are down 9 spots. The Ravens and Steelers are down 6 spots. The Bears and Titans are down 5 spots. Your thoughts on that list as we head into the draft?
Every one of those is going to be impacted by the team that's ranked 32nd. The Cardinals.
By what the Cardinals decide to do with that number 1 pick? Yeah.
I absolutely believe that the landscape of the league will change if the Cardinals take Kyler Murray, because I think there is so much talent in this draft. Defensive talent, especially.
Sure, because here's what happens. Just to explain why Curt says that. If the Cardinals take Kyler Murray, if you think Dwayne Haskins ought to go 5th, 6th, or 7th, he's going number 2. Because the Giants or somebody else like, holy crap, we got to get that guy right now, make a move, go, all right? And now you're talking about Nick Bosa, Quinnen Williams, guys everybody thinks are the number 1 players overall in this draft. Montez Sweat dropping to 3, 4, 5. Yes.
There are teams saying that these defensive linemen are so far beyond these quarterbacks as a value that getting them at 5 is some of these teams are like, there's no chance.
Like, for example, look what the Raiders have done. They got a Pro Bowl tackle from a Super Bowl team. They got maybe the best receiver in the NFL. All right. Now, imagine if this scenario plays out and Nick Bosa drops to them in the 4th pick and they just replaced Khalil Mack like that. Yeah. And they have 2 other first-round picks. Their team could look a lot different when we come to August in training camp. Absolutely.
The domino effect in the NFL draft is so much different
I agree with
than
you.
every other league.
Yeah.
And I believe the Cardinals are going to – I'm struck by the lack of Steeler divisional teams in your top 10, which is unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
But well-deserved. I think the Steelers, this is the first year I've ever gone into the season. I don't know that they're going to be a 500 team. And to say that as a Steeler fan is just ridiculous.
I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility. I don't.
This is going to get NFL back onto the parity mode because it's going to be, quite literally, anybody can win on any given Sundays.
This is a league, remember, since 1990, on average, there have been 5 new playoff teams every year. Since 1990. Keep that in mind. Curt, Great stuff. We're back at it again tomorrow, and we will talk more baseball, college basketball. Will we see Zion Williamson in uniform tonight for Duke? We'll break it all down right here on The Blaze. We'll see you then, Curt.
All right, bud.